My name is Mark Olsen. I write about movies for the Los Angeles Times. Welcome to another of our Chase Sapphire Reserve Experience panels presented by the Los Angeles Times here at the Sundance Film Festival. And thank you so much for joining us this morning for a conversation about If I Go, Will They Miss Me? And so from the film, we have writer-director Walter Thompson-Hernández, actors J.Alphonse Thompson, or J.Alphonse Nicholson, and Danielle Brooks. Walter, I'll
Thank you.
start with a question for you. The film is an expansion of a short that you made that won here at Sundance a few years ago. Was it always a plan to make a feature?
Yeah, thanks for having us here, first of all. I really appreciate being here. Thank you. So when the short won Sundance, I was already kind of writing the feature and really sort of taken aback by, I think, the story felt like it needed a world and a universe that existed longer than the shorts. So yeah, I was already thinking about it.
And then what was that process like of expanding from the short to the feature? Because you went through some of the lab programs here at Sundance?
Yeah, it was interesting, right? Because it was my first script that I ever wrote. Like, I didn't have a script for the short film. I just drew a boy on a rooftop with wings, and just shot over 3 years and stuff. But I'm so grateful for the Sundance Artists Institute. I feel like I'm a child of that institute. I've been through the screenwriters labs and directors labs and Catalyst, and Michelle Satter's like my film mom, and I'm so grateful for all their support.
And tell me a little bit just more about that experience. What is it like going through the labs, and what do you feel that you got from that experience?
Oh, it's incredible, man. It felt like I made the NBA. It feels like really, it's to have Gina Prince Blythewood, standing on your left, and like Virgil Williams and Ed Harris, and Ira Sachs and all these incredible filmmakers, giving so much of themselves to you in your movie, and all the volunteers at the labs. It was a once in a lifetime experience. It felt really incredible.
And then Danielle, tell me a little about how did you come to be involved in the project?
This one right here. I sat down with him at the London. First of all, I'm happy to be here too. Hey, y'all. Sundance, what's up? Last time in Utah. But yes, Walter. We sat down. We probably talked for like an hour. He was telling me about, what he was planning on doing. And I watched the short film. And it was his passion for the story and making sure that people saw us in a beautiful way, because we all are broken, but there's so much more to who we are as humans. And so that excited me. And a lot of times I've played a lot of characters that are larger than life, the Sophias or the Tasties, just big characters. And I wanted to show that I have other sides of me and what I can do. And I knew that I could do that with this character of Lozita. And the beautiful part about her, too, is that she was a real person, and I was interested in exploring that. And one of the first things I told him, I was like, I would love to actually meet her. And then he told me, unfortunately, she had passed away. And so I was like, oh, man, now we got to honor her. So my heart was in it from the jump.
And then, J.Alphonse, how about you? How did you come to the project?
Well, thanks again for having me, y'all. I appreciate you for having me here. I'm so glad to be here. And so for me, same. But I will say, Danielle, I've been knowing Danielle for a really long time now. And I didn't even realize how long I have known her until we got on this project. I was like, man, we got pictures 15 years ago? That's crazy. But my team sent me the short. I watched it with my beautiful wife sitting over there, and I cried like a baby. I said, this is one of the most amazing pieces of art I've ever seen in my life. And I had never seen us depicted in that way. I had never seen Nicholson Gardens depicted in that way, and these were real people. And then I saw Danielle's name on the offer as well. I said, well, I'm doing it. I don't have to read it, because my buddy is doing it. And I called Danielle. She said, this is going to be amazing for you, right? And then I found out as well that we were portraying real people. And I got a chance to meet the guy who I was portraying. His name is Big Ant, and he's like 5'2". And he may be 5'2", but he's one of the most beautiful, complex human beings I've ever met. Someone who lost his wife very early on in his marriage and is now raising his 2 kids, had been incarcerated, and coming out and having to figure life out for himself. I know that guy. You know, I know who he is. He's my uncle. He's my cousin. He's my brother, right? And so, like Danielle said, coming from, you know, being a series regular on a show where I play this pretty intense guy and crazy character on P-Valley, and then all the films I've been able to do, but to be able to settle into someone who is so drenched in reality, who is so relatable. I think fathers are really going to be able to relate to this movie, brothers and sons and husbands especially, you know, and turn the mirror on yourself and say, how can I show up in a better way? But also, what is the joy that comes from this complex life that we live in? And so Walter has written a letter for all of us, especially during the time that we're in right now, but especially for Black and brown people. This is for you, and I'm glad I can be a vessel to share the story.
And Walter, can you talk a little bit, maybe just for folks who haven't seen the movie, just some idea of what it's about, and then also, who, you know, this intersection with these real characters that you're fictionalizing.
Definitely. So if you know, if I were to sort of describe the movie, I would say that it's a, you know, it's this sort of lyrical kind of emotional father-son sort of story, where this boy, played by Bodie Dell, who's also here.
Shout out, Bodie.
Really incredible.
Pew, pew, pew.
What's up, Bodie? It's his child's sort of, you know, mythical way of viewing the world. I think children often sometimes, you know, because the world may seem so mysterious and vast and huge, you know, we all sometimes create mythologies to understand the world. This boy happens to see his father through the lens of Greek mythology. You know, he's learning about Greek myth in school, so he sees his father as Poseidon. And so the whole story kind of revolves around that mythology, but also that moment, right, when like children sometimes realize that their parents are fallible and that their parents are human. And so there's mythology in the movie, and it's a sort of, you know, it's an ode to how we all think about the mysteries in our lives and in our world, and how we all create mythologies to make sense of things.
And then who are some of the real people that you base these characters on?
Everybody but them, you know. So, no, it's really, you know, kind of people who I grew up with, right? There's Big Ant, who I've known most of my life, and Lozita, his wife, who passed away, rest in peace. And you know, just everybody in my community, essentially. You know, I think my background as a, you know, I'm a former New York Times journalist, and for me, you know, my experience working with real people is everything. You know, so it's taken me a while to learn to work with actors. You know, it's taken me a process, but yeah, they're all kind of based on people who I know in my community.
Because the film is dedicated to the residents of Nicholson Gardens in Watts. Can you talk a little bit just about that location that made you, you know, want to shoot there, and then what it was like being there?
Yeah, you know, it was interesting, right? Like, I think earlier versions of this movie, you know, in terms of budget, right, there were conversations around, well, would shooting this in New Mexico, right, be a much cheaper option, you know, would making this in Georgia, and you know, there was like conversations about that, but then I sort of like, you know, where else could we shoot that was under the LAX flight path, which is what this movie is also about, you know, the mythology is about airplanes. It was really important for me to sort of set this movie where I'm from and where a lot of these characters are from, and where, you know, a community that isn't really afforded, I think, the poetry and lyricism that already exists inside of it, right? Like, in this movie, we're not creating poetry. I think we're just sort of revealing it, you know, and sort of how Black and brown bodies kind of move through the world. There's already a lyricism there. I'm just exposing it, you know, it already kind of exists. So it kind of had to be there, nowhere else.
And Danielle, can you talk a bit about being on the location? What did it do for your performance to be there?
I think it grounded it, because we were really, truly immersed in that neighborhood. You know, kids were running in the yard, and, you know, they had a basketball court, and we got to, you know, play hoop in there if they wanted to. I didn't, because I can't play, but just meeting the people, they were a part of this film, and so it's just a reminder, like, this is a real life, you know what I'm saying? And so to ground it, and yeah, it was, how do I say it? We don't have no trailers. It was bare bones, you know. We was just joking about how we had a cooler for, you know, crafty. It was the real deal, you know. But I love that stuff. You know, I'm a theater girl at heart, so getting back to that is a beautiful thing. So yeah.
And what was it like for you, J.Alphonse, being there on location?
It was one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. When you hear the word projects, you feel there's like a bad connotation that comes with that word, and you feel like this neighborhood is rough and dirty and rough around the edges. And then you get there, and it's one of the most calm, peaceful places you've ever been. These children don't have iPhones and tablets. They're not running around. Their parents can't afford all of that, so they're doing what we did. And it's great to see it, and so you feel it. It's like these kids almost don't have any worries. They don't have any idea that these planes are dropping all this jet fuel over top of their neighborhoods. They have no idea they know who Donald Trump is, but they don't give a fuck. You know, they're like, dude, we're outside having a great time. And so that energy was nice to see. And then the people in that neighborhood, unfortunately, they don't think they're seen and heard. So they kind of live in a way where it's just like, we're just going to stay in this bubble and have a great time here. And whatever you think about us, that's what you think about us, but we're safe, we're fine, you know. And so I learned that being there. And I said, man, my buddy grew up here. He grew up in this area. How fortunate am I to live and grew up where I live? And so it gives you a different perspective, and then it also grounded me. It also brought me back to hard times in my life where I knew, this too shall pass, you know. And so you see that in their eyes. I was inspired by our producers to be able to shoot in this neighborhood and kind of give us the things that we needed in order to make that happen. So it was great. And then you had these wonderful experiences, right? I call them wonderful experiences. They were tough for us, but sometimes somebody in the neighborhood just come and just stand right in front of the camera. And they be like, yeah, no, I'm not moving. Like, you got all these lights up in my crib today, and everything is shining through my house. Like, I'm not moving. I want to relax, and y'all shooting this movie today. And I felt bad about that. I was like, man, please, we shooting this movie. Can you mind just like? And they was like, no. So Walt was like, all right, cool. They gonna be in the scene then. Then boom. And it's just like, so wonderful things like that. And so shout out to our whole production team and everyone in that neighborhood who made that great experience.
Walter, can you talk more about that? I mean, were there some surprises shooting in your own neighborhood?
I remember one.
Oh yeah, man. Right. She has a lot. I mean, it's absolutely that. These are like the people who live in my community do not care about Hollywood, right? Like, they do not care about how all the awards that these actors have received, and I love that, and I respect that so much. There's so much in that I admire. So he's absolutely right. There are moments when somebody was not turning down their music.
She would not turn down her music. It was her lunch break.
Yeah.
She said, my 30 minutes is my 30 minutes.
Right. And so we had to schedule around this woman's lunch break. So we could shoot, because she was not turning down her music, for those 30 minutes. So it was like, all right, from 12 to 12:30, we need to be somewhere else, and come back at 12:35 and shoot our really intimate scenes, But yeah, it was an experience that I think, I'm so excited. There's a moment in the movie. I'm not sure if I'm spoiling it, but the credits for me it moves me to tears, because everyone who stood in front of the camera, everyone who didn't turn down their music, who, whatever, is in the credits, and they're looking to the camera, and it is a testament to these beautiful Black and brown families who are going through so much right now, whose lives are in jeopardy, and who, in spite of it all, are still here smiling, dreaming, and excited to be here with us.
And Danielle, I'm so struck by what you said, that you wanted to do this because you really wanted to take on sort of a quieter, smaller role. On the other side of it now, having done it, do you feel like you got out of it what you were hoping for?
I definitely do. I definitely feel like it. I feel like, because it's really not about me at the end of the day. It's about these people. And I felt like what I was able to do with these two and all of the others, I feel like people's voices will be heard in an honest way. I think they will be received. And that's all I could ask for. I just pray that when people watch this film and watch these characters, that they can see themselves. And I know we say that often, but I truly mean that, because these people are trying to get through a lot of trauma, you know what I mean, without the toolbox to do it. And so I just hope that when people watch this, that they see themselves and they actually want to do the work, and know that they're deserving of the work. You know, when we think about therapy, sometimes it thinks like something must be wrong with me, but it's actually no, it's your privilege to find that healing. And that's what I really hope that people see with the performance is like someone working through trying to make the best decisions for her family.
And J.Alphonse, for you, your character is someone who's been away and he's come back. He's trying to reintegrate himself into his community and specifically into his family. How did you approach that? Did you talk to people in the community or people who've been through that experience? Like, how did you sort of like get to your performance?
Well, thankful for Walter being the director that he is. We got an opportunity to spend a lot of time with the people that we were portraying. So Big Ant taught me how to ride a horse for this film, right? He taught me how to clean up the horse shit. He taught me how to be on that farm every day and on that ranch every day. And we had really deep conversations, really heartbreaking conversations about what his life was like at the time. And then for me, like I said, I saw my brother, I saw my cousin, I saw a lot of you guys in here now. I can look in your eyes and see there's something behind what it is that you're going through, but you show up every day. And so drenching myself in that, spending a lot of time talking to Walter. His team is incredible as well, how they move. It was Ramadan, and so half of our team, which is like his cousins and friends, they weren't eating during this film. So seeing their strength, you know, through this time and this movement, it was really great. And so just kind of taking that all in, but also just moving and understanding what my past was, and has been, what my present is, and know that I have a lot of those same qualities within me too, and just kind of pulling those out. But a lot of listening, a lot of laughing, a lot of fun. Every now and then, hey man, you want to take a little sip real quick before you go over there? So just trying to kind of balance that out too, because it's like, look, man, I got to work today. I can't kick it with you like that today. But that was really fun, just being and seeing his everyday environment, and then being in the middle of Compton and finding out that they have a horse ranch behind his house. It's like, this is the neighborhood that you would least expect that, and these people are, like, he's back there standing on top of a horse, on the horse's back just riding. And it's just like, that's one of the most beautiful images I've ever seen. And so you just take it in and then allow it to inspire your work.
Yeah, I can. It's funny, you know, at the Los Angeles Times, we just did a list of the best Los Angeles movies, and it is always so exciting to see corners of the city, parts of the city that aren't usually represented in film. So it's something I just thank you for with this movie, that it's so exciting to see like that horse ranch and to see Nicholson Gardens and the way that life is there. It's just wonderful to see how really full the city truly is.
Yeah. That was one of the sort of like in terms of visual language, I think that was one of the goals, right? It's like I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, and for me, it's like, you know, how LA is represented usually, you know, it's like these sort of very, very narrow tropes, right? It's like there's palm trees, there's like the Hollywood sign, there's like a lowrider, there's somebody crip walking, right? There's hot Cheetos, right? It's like, right, you know what I mean? It's like these tropes which I think exist and are a part of the story, but for me, it's like there's not one palm tree in the movie, right? Like there's not like, you know, we don't only shoot in that like quote unquote beautiful, right, like golden hour light that LA's usually shot in. This movie feels like it could kind of represent a community in many parts in the world, right? There's a lot of lyricism in it, and it's a quiet movie, right? Like it's a patient movie. It's a movie that I think asks an audience to sit, you know, to put their phones away and really think about their experience and these characters' experiences.
And then could you talk a bit more about the use of Greek mythology in the movie? Because it is so unusual, and it exists in this boy's mind, but it seems like it's something larger than that too.
Totally. So the inspiration for me is obviously personal. Like I was 12 years old and I was growing up in that neighborhood and I was learning about Greek mythology. But the other part about it is that there's a book that Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote. It's called Between the World and Me, and it's his book that he dedicates to his son. There's a really beautiful passage in the book where he writes about the sort of like literature and art that his son, that this boy, you know, belongs to, this sort of lineage of art, right? He says, Alice Walker is yours, James Baldwin, Toni Morrison. And then in the same sort of paragraph, he goes on to say, and so is Karl Marx, right? And so is, you know, Simone de Beauvoir, right? And all these sort of like European sort of thinkers and artists. And to me, there's something beautiful and so inspiring about that. Why can't this boy who lives in this housing projects also think about Greek mythology as his? And so, which is, images that we don't really see. And so I was inspired. I thought like that as a child, and why can't this boy in this movie as well?
Because J.Alphonse, there's some moments in the movie where you sort of are depicting these moments from the boy's imagination, and what were those like for you? I can only imagine you were not thinking you were going to be doing scenes in a toga.
I did not think that, and I know I keep saying this, and I don't want you all to think I'm just using this phrase, but seriously, one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had. No, I have never been in a toga. I have not, you know what I'm saying? And so having that experience, reading the film, and the great thing about Walter is that he comes with a manuscript. There's a script, but there's also kind of like passages of like, this is what we're going to do today. And as actors, you just trust his vision. Right. And you just try not to cry while you're shooting, man, because you're doing it. I'm like, no way people are going to see me throwing this trident across the ocean, this little black boy looking at me doing it. I got Jordans on as I'm doing it. You've never seen that image. We've seen images of Medusa, but not micro braids and that you turn them into let me not spoil it for you. You've seen it though, right? So those images made me cry, and I've seen the film 3 times now. Every time I see him, I could be sitting back as soon as it happens and they go into the Greek mythology part of it. I'm like, no way. Not 2 guys in Nicholson Gardens turning into Zeus and Poseidon. It's incredible. That's why I think everyone can relate to it, because we all find ourselves interested in Greek mythology at some point. But it's the child's mind that we all go back to, because we all used to have that mind, right? His is so fresh and new. So the fact that Walter could go back there and give us that experience, and for me, an experience I've never had before, it was just great. It really was.
And Danielle, I don't think I'm spoiling anything with this. There's a moment in the film that I genuinely feel like I've never seen before, where you, as a mother, apologize to your son. Like you say, like, I feel like I could do better next time. Can you talk a little bit about that scene and what it meant to you?
No. I don't want to, okay? Yeah, it hit me. And like you were just saying about how Walter works, I really love his style, because he knows that there's so much more than what's just on the page, right? So that scene, he brought me back into LA to do reshoots. And he said, I want this, what would you do? What would you say as a mother? So he trusted me enough to improv that scene. And it's a little terrifying, you know what I mean? But sometimes, we are given experiences in life so that we can share and have a testimony. And sometimes it's so that we can also put it into our art. And so I feel like I've had moments in my personal life where I've had to say, I'm sorry, So that was a real honest moment for me.
And Walter, do you want to talk about that scene at all?
Yeah, it's a really. I think Danielle did such an incredible job. I'm not a mother, so I can't speak that experience. So for me, just relying on, on Danielle's expertise and talent and all these sort of things. It was a moment where it's a really hard conversation. I think for a lot of us, right? Like a lot of us didn't grow up with parents, admitting wrong or guilt, or saying I'm sorry. And so for me to see that, in a visually with this family in this community, I would have loved to have seen that growing up. And now I think for a lot of us who maybe have the tools now that we didn't have as children, or for our parents or uncles or aunts, it's just it's such a beautiful way to see and to hope that a lot of us can experience that in our personal lives. It's a really powerful moment, I think.
And I am a mother, if you don't know.
But there's also a scene between the two of you. It's a very powerful sort of confrontation between the two of you. And first of all, Danielle, you cry in that scene, and not to reduce this to something trivial, but like, are you an easy crier? Like, is it something that you can access as a performer? Because I'm always astonished by it whenever I see it on screen.
I wouldn't say, well, it's funny because sometimes I actually hate when a director will say, this is the moment that you will cry. Because I will not cry. because I always feel like there actually might be some beauty in not crying. I actually think the goal is holding back. Nobody wants to cry. We're actually trying to control, well, some people do, but we're trying most of the time to control our emotions, to not show, to not have that be so vulnerable and open, right, in that way. So to answer your question, I don't necessarily want to say I'm an easy crier, but I have a lot of emotions in me. Actually, when I watch, if you ever watch me watch theater or a movie, I am so intense because this talking about the work is actually hard for me because I feel it. Like when I watch theater, I'm like this. It's like I wish there was a word for it, but it's a body thing that I feel in different parts of my chakras. So I guess I can access it in a way that most people might not be able to tap into as quickly. But it's also what you're being given. You know what I mean? It's not just me. It's also what's given. And working with Fonz is so easy because he's such an honest actor, you know, and he studies the work. So us bouncing that ball back and forth, we there, you know. It didn't take much to drop in. And I would say that sometimes it's just quiet. Walter would give us the space, find a quiet moment, just look in each other's eyes, and you could see the pain. You could feel it. So that's just how I work. And I've always wanted to explain that. Like, I don't always have the words. It's a feeling that I have. So thank you.
And J.Alphonse, can you talk a bit about that scene? Because it's so interesting, because the way the story is structured, your two characters are sort of circling around each other, bouncing off of each other a lot, and then you do have this big moment of sort of confrontation and reconciliation. What was it like for you to sort of reach that moment between the two of you?
Man, coming from the theater as well, understanding that my body processes things in a different way, as from TV and film actors. You know, we have a way of processing things, but when you come from the stage and you're doing it in front of people every night, and all that energy is there for you, kind of build up this thing, this well. I love to cry. So I just like to have a good cry. I was about to cry just now. I'm like, shit, let me keep it together. But you've been crying all the time. I've been over here looking at you and you crying. So I'm an easy crier because I feel the pain, I feel the things. But to Danielle's point, there is I think a etiquette to it on film, to where you do want to hold back and find a way to kind of push through that. And you know, Walter tell you there are plenty of scenes where I cried, and Walt was like, all right, let's not cry at this scene. Let's try to have another moment. And when you see the film, and you see the moment that he chose to, for me to cry, which was actually my first day. That was my first scene, and I needed that cry.
First 10 minutes.
First 10 minutes.
Of production.
And it was like 5:30 in the morning. He was like, bro, everything just happened. This is what happened. And I was like, it's time to cry.
But I also have to give you this too. That is hard to do. When you do a scene, that's the last scene in the movie, and you do it first. Kudos to you. That is not easy work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
You've not done any of the work yet.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. And giving the compliments right back to Danielle, one of the most grounded and just breathe. I had a great friend say, breathe and believe. And she does that. She's the epitome of that. And so working with her has been amazing. Being able to hang on to her coattails. I'll share a quick experience working with Danielle. She had got invited to the Vanity Fair while we were shooting. I had never been. And she said, you want to go with me to this thing? And I'm like, yeah, man, I want to go. And I went and I cried that day too. I cried, got me a suit, and went with her. But so kind, so generous, and not only in her work, but who she is as a person. And so being able to have that conversation was really hard. Seeing her cry like that was tough. And knowing that she brings so much of herself to the role, it was really tough. And then my character just has to sit there and realize what he's done. And I think all of us sometimes has to have that mirror placed on us and say, see what you did, see how you can do better. Right? And you have to tell yourself that, and sometimes through film, you have to experience that. You have to see someone else experience that so you can kind of register what's happening for yourself. So it was beautiful.
And then, Walter, as a filmmaker, when you see what's happening between the two of them, like the dynamic that's growing and the connection that they have, What do you do as a filmmaker to sort of like bring that out and give them the room to let that flower?
That's such a great question, Mark. They both mentioned it earlier, like, the way that I work, there's obviously a script, right? But the script is the North Star. It's a blueprint, I'm so much more invested in discovery, kind of in what we find together and what we find that didn't exist on the page. So for me, in being around these two actors who were so incredibly talented, so professional, there was a moment in the movie when I just started to lean into who they are and what they were bringing to the role and to the character, all the sort of personal things and challenges and joys in their lives that they were bringing to our set. Is kind of what we started to lean into. The trust grew, and I think the sort of characters evolved into something that I think both of you have mentioned sometimes feels like a documentary, right? It feels like a slice of life, like we're kind of just watching this family partake in this experience called life. And so it's a testament to them and to how natural and how honest it all feels. And as a filmmaker, it is my job to get out of the way of the story, right? And to get out of the way of their performances and not the opposite, and that's kind of what I did with them.
And now I asked this question with no self-interest whatsoever, but can you talk a little bit about your journey from journalist to filmmaker? Like, how did you make that happen?
Question, man. Yeah, so it's, I've done so many things, man. Like, I was in a PhD program at UCLA for a couple of years, and I left. I was in anthropology, right, cultural anthropology. And then I applied to the New York Times, and I got accepted. And I worked at the New York Times for 4 years. I was a global subculture reporter. Every story I worked on, I wrote, I photographed, I directed. I kind of did a lot at the New York Times. And there was a moment I wrote a story about this group of friends called the Compton Cowboys. Yeah, which turned into a book and a film deal, and that kind of opened my eyes to the power of these stories outside of a sort of 2,000 word word limit and photos that I would take. And film is something that I've always loved so much. Like, my family, movies meant so much to us growing up. So for me, it's all the things that I've done to date are really just allowing me to grow into a filmmaker, writing, sound, all these sort of things, right? So it's kind of been my journey. And the short film that I made in 2022, that was the first movie I ever made and won Sundance.
And then we have just a few minutes. If we have any questions from the audience, we have microphones that we can bring to you. Yep, we have one right here in the front. Here, I'll just hand you mine.
First of all, congratulations on the movie. This question is for you, Walter. Being from LA and being from those communities that you shot in, how easy was it for you not to have, quote, permission to shoot? Because LA politics, and being able to showcase that story to those who don't just live in LA but outside of it. But it's not just an LA story, it's a human story.
That's a great question, Nick. Well, someone named Maxwell, right, who is in the movie in different moments. I've known Maxwell for a long time. He is essentially the mayor of that housing projects. And Maxwell's a great friend of mine, and he knows everybody. So, a Film LA permit, right, could have gotten us access to shoot around Los Angeles, but really it was a Maxwell permit that we needed. Right? That meant so much more than any permit we could have had. Right? So it was kind of that, man. It's also, I think, for me, I'm from there. I'm not just sort of parachuting in. I'm there all the time, right? And so I think that's also part of it too.
And we got another right.
Hi, this is Evan Jackson from Young, Bold, and Regal. This question is for Danielle. What did you learn about yourself after making this film?
Ooh, what did I learn about these questions? I told Walter and I told Fonz, I watched this on the plane on the way up here and bawled my eyes out. Y'all ugly cried, embarrassingly. And I immediately called my therapist. Because this one was heavy for me. So what I learned about myself during this, because I do feel like every character gives you a gift and it's unexpected. And I thought that I was going to be giving Lozita a gift by honoring her, right? But she reminded me, she said, in a spiritual way, that it is not just a need to be a good mother. It's a must. You must be a good mother. And I have always been. But that means if some certain people gotta go, that's what it's gonna take. And so that was heavy for me. But I feel like I got a lot of healing. My family got a lot of healing from taking this journey with this story. So.
And J.Alphonse, I'd ask that same question to you. Is there anything from this project you think you're going to be taking forward?
So much, so much. Same thing. After watching it, just, you know, it's weird seeing yourself as an actor sometimes, watching yourself and be like, oh, that's me too. That's not Ant. That's me portraying or truly understanding something about this character and the similarities between myself and this character. And yeah, it can be heartbreaking, man. You can say, man, I need to work on who I am as a father. I need to work on who I am as a husband and take more accountability. And this film does that in a real way. Then it also teaches you how to live in the joy of moments too, how to not be so hard on yourself, how to say, you know what, the world is in a messed up place right now, but I have to kind of push through these moments. And so I think that film has really done that for me. But the film itself is a therapy session and kind of really listening and understanding, just how I can be better and show up better for the people that surround me.
And we have time for just a couple. We have one right there. Oh, there's a microphone right by you.
Hi, I'm been to a couple Chase events this past weekend, and this is by far the best, so I just want to say. But I was curious about the casting process and, you know, how you think about authentic casting and how that might be different from what a lot of casting is.
That's a great question. Yeah, I think so much of this movie was done in like a very sort of non-traditional way. That's kind of my approach to everything, to life. And the sort of casting, you know, it honestly didn't start with these two incredible actors. It started with, you know, people who I knew in my community and knowing their work schedules, actually, right? Like they were available to shoot at certain times. But yeah, it was a very sort of kind of like word of mouth, like Danielle and Alphonse, you know, brought in Miles and Breezy, and it was sort of a very sort of like familial experience where Alphonse and Danielle were like, hey, I know this person, you know, who could be great for this role, and you know, just done in like a very organic way that kind of like went beyond artifice, or, you know, and it just felt so honest, so beautiful in a way that this movie was kind of made in that sort of spirit.
And we have one right here. And the question is just how long did it take to shoot?
We had like 20 days or so.
Shout out to our producers sitting over there, Saba and Ben. And then we did some reshoots, so about 28 days, and then Danielle was on the East Coast, crazy schedule, so trying to make that work. I was shooting another project at the same time, so it was fun. And on the fact of Walter saying, hey, who do you know, or allowing us to bring people in, a wonderful gift. In exchange that we receive executive producer credit, which is amazing for me to have my first Sundance film be a lead role and an executive, you know, producing credit. It's just really kind and a nice thing to do. So I just really thank you all for making that happen too.
And before we go, Walter, I would just want to ask you, this being the last Sundance here in Park City, what does that make you think about as far as sort of like the place of independent film right now, and specifically Black independent film? I think this is such a wonderful project in that it shows like the, you know, Black film can mean a lot of different things. And so for you, what is like thinking about, you know, this moment at Sundance, what does it make you think about this moment for independent film?
I mean, I think it's a really important moment. You know, I think we are in this sort of moment, if I'm being entirely frank and honest, where, you know, I feel like in 2021 and 2020 there was a lot of support, right, for like diverse storytelling, you know, and a lot of this wave of financing and studios and financiers were really backing a lot of projects. And then, you know, it was really hard to make this movie, right? There were a lot of iterations, and it wasn't about me. Every studio who I met with, you know, every financier, Walter, we love you. We love the script. we just did something similar that didn't do too great, right? Sometimes not in those words. So it's an interesting moment, you know. I think for me, making this movie in this way shows us that movies can be done in different ways, and that our stories not just matter, but are incredibly vital and important. You know, I think there's something so specific about this story, right? A story about a 12-year-old boy who lives in Watts, California, but there's something so universal about it. So for me, you know, I'm a hopeful person. I think the quote that I live by is that, you know, that there's always a crack, right? And the light always gets in, you know, so I'm hopeful.
And so we're going to wrap up there. So if I could just ask everyone to just stay seated while our guests leave the room, please join me in thanking some of the creative team behind If I Go, Will They Miss Me?
Thank you all so much.